my cable's a limitation here. So weaknesses, internal. Anyone want to stab at the O's?
Opportunities.
Objectives.
Outcomes?
Opportunities. Brian got it up front. So opportunities are external to us. So if you're catching the drift here, we have we're building a grid. Some are internal, some are external, some are positives, and some are like a little bit more challenges. So what do we think are threats, or, oh god. You know, I'll just tell you. It's fine. I'm like looking at the slide and it's like telling me already. So T stands for threats. Threats are external to us. So when we're thinking about opportunities, that's also external to us, but those are going to be things like, I don't know, do you have a wide network? An opportunity might also be, do you travel for work? Are you able to visit new places? What's another opportunity? Something external to us that is not central, but is not.
I have a question actually.
Yeah.
Could you clarify why having to travel for business is an opportunity?
It can be an opportunity. It might not be, but maybe if you get to travel for business, I thought of it from my perspective. I'm from Binghamton, but I get to be in this room with you, and it means I get to meet you all. You're all artists, and we're building a network here by meeting each other, and that becomes a positive.
Okay.
In traveling to Potsdam, I got to meet a bunch of artists in that community, and for me, that's a positive. That's an opportunity.
Thank you.
Yeah. It could also be a threat. If I have to travel for work, it means that I might have to be on the road for my time becomes condensed, right? So you can see how it would fit maybe in both categories. Yeah. Okay, questions so far? Lovely. So for exercise number 1, we're just gonna spend 5 minutes working on our own SWOT. Very specifically, you're welcome to revisit this in your own time, but I would encourage you to think about maybe your networks, like your relationship to other people and spaces, how you interpersonally connect to humans and other people and things like that. Try and focus this on intention setting around what we're going to keep moving into, which is crowdfunding, individual giving. Some of those spaces might be more interpersonal, and some of those spaces might have to do with large networks, so you can kind of see where we're getting into. Grant writing has a lot to do with research. Are you big into writing? Things like that. Okay, so I'm going to give you 5 minutes, and we will touch base at 6:18. Yeah.
Okay, maybe I missed it. Is it related just to art, or it's overall strengths and weaknesses?
Overall strengths and weaknesses, totally fine about your person, and that's wonderful. But today, again, we're focusing in on fundraising. So I think it's helpful to think about interpersonal strengths and weaknesses, things like that.
Can you provide an example of a threat? Again, I'm not sure I fully grasp what that one is.
Yes. So this is, I've skipped ahead in my slides.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's okay.
probably stop the recording when there's a exercise.
Okay, so here's how you use a SWOT analysis. You go opposite in your quadrant. You take your strengths, and it's supposed to be helpful in theory to use your strengths to address the threats that you might have listed in your category, right? So that's the idea. So if I'm very personable, very networked, and there's a threat just generally for all of us, there's just lack of funding for the arts, and if we're like looking to be applying for grants, maybe because we're networked and personable, there's an opportunity to address that by circumnavigating grants. Maybe we're crowdfunders, maybe we go around and do individual giving asks. Opportunities, we have a very supportive arts community. A weakness, self-doubt, maybe disorganized. Can you lean on your community to address that? So again, we're looking across, trying to see how we can answer some of the questions that we have for ourselves. So, now we've teed ourselves up. Do we understand? Do you have any questions so far? We've just teed ourselves up to like get into the meat of everything. And that's a tool that you're welcome to use later for different things, but for our purposes, crowdfunding, individual giving, grant writing, this will all make sense, I promise. So, does anyone want to take a stab at helping me define fundraising overall? No?
Making money?
Making money. For our purposes, it's an umbrella term for bringing in funds. So currently, myself included, a lot of the times I'm, quote, self-funding my projects. Fundraising is meant to be a way to help us step outside of that. So maybe there's a pocket of funding or an ask that we can do or a project that we can frame that we can have someone else bring in funds for or bring in money to. So that hopefully it's no longer me working my day job and investing into my practice and just putting it there. It's hopefully neutralizing costs in some way. Oops, I didn't even ask you. Crowdfunding. As it sounds, you're asking large groups of people to contribute to a project. Its basis is in large networks, big groups of people, maybe a large community presence, and engagement with ideas in your area. Yeah. Individual giving, anyone want to give a guess to what that might mean? As the name patrons.
Donation.
Yes, patrons, individual, yes, donations.
Yeah.
It's a specific ask, maybe of an individual, it could be from a business, to contribute to a specific project. It's more like intimate asking. So for instance, if you are better one-on-one at coffee versus like you hate the big room of too many people and you don't know who to talk to, this might be a better fit, potentially. Like grant writing as, who here has written grants before? Oh, you're all done. Okay, so you're asking a specific pot of money, usually, or a specific fund, usually maybe managed by a foundation, or in our case, a re-granting organization such as CAP, or a government entity for money to contribute to a project that you outline for them. Questions? Great. Oh, yeah.
I'm curious about the distinction between individual giving and crowdfunding, because like if you're crowdfunding, then aren't you also asking individuals?
There will definitely be overlaps for sure. And for our purposes, everything is going to start on an individual level. There's often though momentum behind crowdfunding that might not be necessary or come up for an individual ask. And I'll give you some really specific examples that'll hopefully help. And yes, there will be overlap. Yeah. Okay, so keep in the back of your mind as we go through these different elements and sort of platforms that are suggested or could be suggested, and take my word or leave it for these things, which is the best fit for me and my practice. The goal today is not to feel like you have to engage in any and all of these or all of these things. It's to maybe figure out what is the best fit, again, for me and my practice, and maybe that's a starting point. Don't want you to leave feeling like I have to do a crowdfunding campaign this year and work on my individual gifts and write 6 grants, because that's unrealistic. We're human. Time is a real thing, kind of. But you know, there's constraints. We'll get into that at the half hour at the end. Okay, so crowdfunding. Remember we were talking about our strengths, our weaknesses, opportunities. To me, crowdfunding is, are you good at community engagement? Do you love stepping into those big rooms where like people just are and you just have ease in those spaces? For some of you that might fully be the case, for others that might just give you hives. Are you persistent? Are you energetic? Having worked on a number of crowdfunding campaigns, you have to put energy into it. You are the driver. If you want someone to contribute to the campaign, you have to be reminding them, and you have to be ready for people to ignore you the first 4 times you ask. So you have to be persistent about it. Yeah, so those are some key elements to it. So it's about why networks. I would say it's about forming, like I said, momentum and energy. So even if you get a no the first time, you're willing to keep going back and diving in. And it's about communicating a story. All of these will be about communicating a story, but in this particular case for crowdfunding, because it might start with immediate connections, it's gonna proliferate out. You have to tell strangers the big idea. And so it's really important for this type of fundraising. So why should I contribute? Why should the wider community contribute? Like, why would we be interested in doing this for this type of thing? Let's just take your photo. Okay, so very common crowdfunding platforms. We've all, well maybe we haven't, most of us have heard of them. We get shown them ad nauseum, it's fine. So who here is familiar with Kickstarter? Okay, cool. Patreon? Substack? Okay. GoFundMe? I feel like GoFundMe is like still in my slides, but it's got a different lean to it, and that's totally fine. Just a platform. But basically, the idea behind Kickstarter, it's an all or nothing. You put out a project, you say, I need to make this goal amount. If you do not reach that goal amount, you don't get any of the money. It's returned to those who are contributing to it. Why is this good? Because it creates a sense of urgency, a need for someone to contribute. If you don't make this goal, like it helps you in your crowdfunding. If you don't make the goal, you don't get to do the project at all. So there's pros and cons to it. Patreon and Substack are typically subscription basis, so it's trying to get people to subscribe for content. I would say they're geared towards probably writers and people who are frequently doing content, musicians. Maybe a paywall is helpful at a certain point with your audience for them to keep engaging. You can also have free versions of those things to help you build audience and then add the subscriber model to it. They'll take a percentage. Yep.
Could you say a little bit about Substack? Because I feel like it's relatively new.
Yeah, we're gonna get into details for sure, definitely. Yeah, anyone use Substack? It seems like you might, okay. Okay, and then GoFundMe, you get whatever is contributed to that campaign, but a percentage is taken. And GoFundMe is actually predominantly used, I think, more for activist, community building, organizing type spaces now, but there is arts in there. Yeah?
Where would you put Indiegogo?
Oh, I don't know.
Okay.
I mean, anyone else have any thoughts on that? Do you have thoughts on it? I haven't personally used it.
I used it a million years ago, and I would say it was more like GoFundMe, but I'm not feeling confident about my statement just now, which is why I was looking for other input.
I'm confident in your statement.
Similar to GoFundMe?
Yeah.
So they just take a percentage and it's a platform for that.
And it's more geared toward artists, whereas I think GoFundMe is more like you said, a cause.
Yeah. Yeah, these are just common platforms. You're more than welcome to use any and all others that make sense. Also, a big suggestion is, this is mostly a suggestion I should just take for myself, but like being on the digital like money giving services, like trying to say PayPal, Cash App, Venmo, easy ways, Zelle, people like to give money in easy ways. They're not necessarily gonna walk up to you and give you cash, right? So like just being easy to donate to is another way to crowdfund or individual give, sort of. But these are formalized, they give you a framework. We'll look at a few of them. So, anyone familiar with Luma, Projection Arts Festival? Based in the old bingo, good old bingo. If you're not familiar with it, that's totally fine, I'm not offended. I've worked with them for like the last 5-ish years, 6 years, sorry to block your view. Basically, Luma Projection Arts Festival, every single year of its existence, I think year 10, we've done 10 Kickstarters now, we do a Kickstarter. And the Kickstarter, its goal is always like finishing funds for the festival. In the first year, I think our ask was a $10,000 goal, and it's basically a way, for our purposes, for us to be able to offer merchandise, right? So it's like still an exchange. One of the core principles of Kickstarter is that there is an exchange. As a contributor, you are getting something. That something might be the end product that you are making and someone is buying into. Something might be a t-shirt, but it's helping contribute to the larger festival cause. I don't know if it's going to open here.
Just out of curiosity, is there a mission for that festival?
It's free.
It is free.
Yep, so one of the things that we do is we talk about our Kickstarter as the way to keep it free, because we want to decrease barriers to entry where possible, especially to new media art forms. And so this is like, if you are able to contribute, you help to keep it free for other people. This is your ticket. So this is what a Kickstarter page would look like. Suggestion for any and all platforms that you are using, no matter the platform, is use all the features, or as many as you can stomach, that they offer. So Kickstarter encourages you to do a video. You don't have to do the video, but doing a video about the project and like taking time to frame it that way is helpful. It's also shareable. It's more media. Some people don't want to read anything, they just want to view it in little bits and bursts. So doing the video is helpful. In this case, like we've been doing it for 10 years, so we up our annual goal kind of regularly at this point, or try to. And you can see that we made it. And it shows you like stats, like how many people did support this thing. We tell the story. If you are not able to tell the story about the thing that you want to fundraise for, you have to start getting good at that. Or maybe it's not ready to be pitched to the world just yet. So like keep that in the back of your mind. So art and storytelling and technology. Anyway, yeah, this is the merch. So you would get stickers if you add certain level. You might get a t-shirt or a hoodie. And there's like, yeah, fanny packs is here. And then like the top level is you can come to like a big like VIP party that's basically networking on the night before the big festival happens, which is kind of fun.
So in a certain sense, to be able to offer that kind of merch, you need to be at a certain level.
Sort of. You definitely have to invest in what, like you have to calculate for cost. So you always have to calculate, like t-shirts cost money to produce. The design costs money to produce. So that's coming out of the Kickstarter budget for sure. But it's like worth it because you might then therefore.
With such a large goal,
yes.
You can do it. Yeah.
Anyone familiar with Cards Against Humanity? Do you know what got it started on Kickstarter? Yeah, so that's a famous one. Not everything is at this quite level. Cards Against Humanity and actually board games in general, and card games, typically use Kickstarter as their starting point. Because if there's enough interest, you are able to then produce the thing. How can you translate that to your own practice? I have a friend, Allie Palmer Art, who does this on a smaller scale. So her Kickstarter, or her Ocean Maiden enamel pins, that's how she dictates what products she might be making or what items she might be making. She's done the design work. She'd love them to be enamel pins. And if she can get enough backers to make her goal, this is more our probably range, yeah. She will do the thing and she will make it. And the pins, the initial run of the pins that is supported by this Kickstarter, the people that contribute get pins. But because it's Kickstarted, she maybe then has therefore excess stock that she's able to keep on hand and sell later. So that's maybe more translatable. So she tells her story. you're deciding on if you want 1, 2, or maybe 3 of the pins or 4 of the designs. It asks you always, like, what are the risks, what are the challenges? And these are good questions for yourself too. They feel annoying at first, but if you're not considering them as well, like, now is the time to think about them. That's why they're asking. So, that is. GoFundMe. So this was a student fundraising for, oh, that's not it here, it's this page. Syracuse filmmaker senior who was trying to do production cost-based fundraising to finish off a film in Syracuse. So this was his GoFundMe, and I think it did end up getting backed. But the goal for this individual was probably anything will help, right? This is my ultimate goal, but anything will help. And so GoFundMe becomes a good platform for that because you get a percentage of anything that is contributed. You don't have to give it back, so you're gonna get something towards your goal. Just to show you, this is GoFundMe. Like I said, it's generally geared towards like more interpersonal community building. They do have a creatives category. Generally speaking, research-wise, just going to these sites and seeing what people are putting out there, that can be a helpful frame for you for building your own like project narrative, helping you frame it for your own practice. So yeah, some of them have large raises. It's still pretty large. This is rebuilding. Oh, this is depressing. Sorry. The storm. Rebuilding a music space. Yeah. Not my favorite. Used to have a different name. Totally fine. A valid option. Oops. So Patreon. Who's on Patreon again? I'm on Patreon. My only subscriber is my mom. Like, that's just the reality. She's so dedicated. I love her. However, I haven't found like a good way for my personal practice, which is like a studio practice, to translate into Patreon. And that's what I'm saying. I think this is actually, and maybe others have found better use for it, but better geared towards those of you who are making, like, are you poetry writing? Are you like my literary friends, my musical friends? If you're mostly interested in writing in some capacity, or maybe you like to blog about your work, this is a good space for that. I also think Substack, similarly, is very common for that at this point. This is an example in Binghamton, Binghamton Community Radio. They have you can like customize, right? So you can change these levels of support to like fit whatever it is, so it's cute, right? Like LP Power Up, Community Voice Amplifier. Like mine are like velvet level, and like, you know what I mean? Because I'm a fiber artist. So yeah, so there's cute things to do. I think the lowest paid level that you can offer is like $2 or $1. Yeah.
I was just gonna suggest that you could use it for teaching.
Oh
like,
yeah.
Because that's what you already do, and you know, if people have skill sharing, that's, you know,
Like
a content option
Like PDF info.
from the art.
That's true.
practice or from your workshop.
That's true. Yeah.
Just
Because
a
I
thought.
do produce content, technically speaking.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. So this is, I don't know if I linked theirs. Yep.
Maybe you're about to.
You can ask, go for it.
So on Patreon, since there's different levels of subscription, do you have access to different content?
Yes.
On the level? Okay.
There's different, and you set that, so it's very customizable. And I think it tells you a little bit. So for $1 a month, you can just become a supporting member. You get a bumper sticker if you're an LP Power Up. And then like it builds from there. So you can customize it as the person building out the platform. I think in my case, it was like, I guess maybe I had a $1 level just to be a supporter, and you get to see things that I post on the platform. And I try to post, or I tried, now again, it's my mom, so she already gets this in text message format, to post projects before I posted it on my social media so that they got a heads up. That was my version of it. But getting content or your favorite coffee mug, you know, like is a common thing as well. But you have to make sure that it's worth it for you. So is $5 a month actually going to be worth it for you to ship someone a sticker or a coffee mug or a t-shirt or whatever the thing is, or a print, or you know what I'm saying? Yeah, Viv?
So I've used Patreon,
Yeah.
and I think the most important thing is that you have a large, like it works well, like if you're on YouTube, or you need a large pool, and then some of them will
Contribute.
contribute, but you gotta have like a big pool, a way that you can broadcast yourself on this.
Yeah, so that's where like being in rooms like this and before you leave, talking to everybody and starting to like build out your network, you're already doing the work for like building out in these ways. These are future options or potential options to engage in. Let me take you to, because I think it's going to get Substack. Anyone familiar with the Jealous Curator? Yeah. Okay, got a few of you in the room. So the Jealous Curator, you can still find this individual online, began as a routine blog, publicly like accessible blog, as a personal project for this Danielle Krissa. She's an artist, but she was jealous of practicing with other people. So she was researching them, and then she began interviewing them, and then she started a podcast, and she built this whole network and base around her interest in other people's work and practice. And she recently switched over to a paid subscription, recently, it's been like 2 years now, a paid subscription model, where she leveraged this community that she had built. And now there is a small paywall, it just increased, that you have to subscribe to. At first, people were very interested in getting featured by her, and so that became it. You had to be a member of hers in order to be featured. And that's actually really beneficial. I became a member and I got featured, and it was like, whoa, I met so many people through it, which was weird and unexpected. So also worth it for like a marketing investment, I would say. But she's like an interesting one to look at as a case study. So Substack, would you mind telling me your experience with Substack?
I'm fairly new to
Okay, so this is
Substack, but it works as a free email service provider, and you can also host podcasts for free on it.
Oh, cool.
So if you're offering free content, you can do it that way. Because most email service providers, you have to pay like significant monthly fee, and a lot of podcast hosting isn't free. So that's two of the things you can use it for. And then you can also have subscribers. You can create different tiers, and the minimum subscription is $5 a month. They won't let you do it lower than that, which I recently learned. But I subscribe to a few podcasts and content creators on there, and yeah, I really enjoy listening on my app.
Thank you for sharing that. And I don't personally have it, so I've only engaged with it through the lens of Jealous Curator, but also knowing that a lot of my friends are actually getting into the space. And I think right now, as far as like the subscription-based model goes, I would personally probably aim for Substack versus Patreon. Just there's so much complication around Patreon, and it's worth researching if it does seem like it might be a good fit for you. A nonprofit it might be a good fit for. But I think that there's so much momentum and talk around Substack that might be the smart place to be if this feels like a good fit for you. Okay. So yeah, it's subscription based, and my take on Patreon in particular, and I know less about Substack, is I think you have to cash it out. So all the dollar payments my mom's been making me for 3 years, it's nice. I checked in on it, but you have to cash it out to get it. So I think they kind of hope that you'll forget about it. As subscriptions go. Yeah.
Send it monthly, Patreon guys. Yeah,
They send it
to
out?
you. Yeah.
Oh.
Maybe
I have to do one more step.
yeah.
I have to
On your
cash
bank
mine out. Sorry to kick on them, so thank you for correcting me. I have one more step. Okay, so that was my overview of crowds. Crowds in general, right? It's always going to start with who you know, and it's always going to proliferate based on your ability and energy to continually broadcast it. No one knows about my Patreon because I only told a few people about it, and I talked about it one time. If I had more momentum and energy to like reconfigure it and maybe like update it for what I actually think it could be used for now, and I talked about it again, I might get a few more people involved, but I have to continually be doing that, and it will build out from there. So individual giving really revolves around relationship building. I'll give you a very specific example in a minute, and hopefully it's something that you can see maybe working for you in your own practice. Relationship building, close ties, strong interpersonal networks. So I am what I might call an introverted extrovert. I like to be in these rooms. I'll be very tired tonight, but I thrive one-on-one in a coffee situation with someone and building that relationship out. So individual giving has been something that I've tapped into a few times for my own personal practice. So yes, I already said this, but about relationships and networks, it needs to be an opportunity if you're going to do an individual one-to-one ask that either fits this individual or fits this business if that's the route you're going, but it needs to fit for both of you. You shouldn't be doing individual giving without having put pretty distinct thought into who that ask is of and why that person or that space. Sorry, I'm looking at my notes. They're kind of small on my screen. You need to converse and tell them why. So in this case, I would say it's less about storytelling, more about framing, if that makes sense. So storytelling, there's an arc to what's happening. I think framing is this is an honest need, here's why, I've done my research, can you contribute X amount? It's more almost transactional, I'd say, than crowdfunding, which is the story arc. Here's this thing that we want to do. You could be involved. We have a clock. Thank you. Okay, so brainstorming for a hot second. Think about who potential donors might be inside of your own bubble, your own network. Who do you converse with regularly? It's a thought exercise here. Who comes to your shows? Who comes to your poetry readings? Who comes to your events, right? Individual giving is huge in nonprofit, assuming you're with a nonprofit, yeah. Who engages with you regularly online? Who's commenting? Who's liking those stories? I don't know much about TikTok. Who buys your books? Who's offered in the past to do something for you in kind? A network builds organically by meeting someone new, right? So if there's someone you are interested in talking to, you emailed me. We haven't met before. You're now in my network. We're going to have a conversation. That's how it builds. It's never, I think networking has this weird jargon feel to it that's kind of transactional, but a network is basically friendships and loose ties that you work on and build. You don't want to meet someone or some entity and immediately try and do something with them. Usually it's you're understanding each other better over time, if that makes sense. Okay, so an example. I gotta sit down for this one. So an artist wants to create an exhibition catalog, but lacks the funds to do so. So they identify the need, $500 say for design time. Divide that out, whatever that is per hour, 4 days of work. And $400 to cover the print cost run. They've done some research, they've touched base with a local printer, they asked for some numbers and stats, and can we do full color, what's the catalog buying gonna be, if I wanna do 40, how many, if I wanna do 500, how much, done a little research. So they've made essentially a small budget for themselves to do this project. They don't wanna self-fund it though, because to them this is a tangential project. It's a nice to have, it's not a necessity, right? Yeah. So the artist has had a few artwork sales. It's a recurring vocal support from one individual in particular. And so they decide, let's see what happens. What's the worst that can happen if I do an individual give ask? This has spelling errors in it, I discovered, but that just makes it more human. So, hello Jean. I wanted to reach out for 2 reasons. First, to thank you for your support. Your words of encouragement, feedback, and patronage really mean a lot to me in my practice. Second, I'd like to create a catalog for my current exhibition. This exhibition is a huge career milestone for me and feels important to mark in a tangible way. To make this happen, I'm reaching out to supporters to help me reach my goal of $900 to create and publish an exhibition catalog. This goal will cover both design and printing costs. So see how this is breaking down the exact thing? This becomes the why. Less of a story arc, more of a frame. Can you contribute to this goal? Any amount will help. I'm putting an asterisk here. So a lot of times there's like this exact point. I'm like a little more vague because I don't want someone to feel like, oh, that's too much. I was critiqued by our friends in Potsdam who read our NIFA book, and sometimes it's very helpful to actually just give a direct number and they can come lower, but like that kind of level of ask. If you're confident enough for it, I would recommend it. I wasn't, it's fine. Any amount will help is what I went with. I'd of course credit your support in the catalog itself and get you printed copies. Let me know your thoughts and I'd be happy to discuss it further. So this individual did give some money via PayPal. We made it easy for them to give. And the artist racks their brain and gets the full project funded with a few like in-kind asks and a few more contributions. Yeah, so that was clearly a true story, but it worked itself out. Yeah.
If it hadn't, though, would
I
the
would
money have gone back to
the individual.
the individual?
I probably would have spent less time doing the thing. Or like I would make a cost benefit analysis. Like, is it still worth my time? I did get a contribution towards this thing. I still would credit them. Yeah, I did get it funded though, so I was just really grateful. And I extolled that and I gave them their flowers and yeah. So my take on it is it's worth trying to do. And if I only got like not even a fraction of what I needed, I probably wouldn't have gone through with the full thing and I would have given it back. Yeah.
Okay.
Out of honesty and integrity. Yeah. Brian?
When is it best to ask in person versus to ask through email like you did?
Oh, that's a good question. Probably it depends on
The relationship.
and proximity. So this individual isn't in my area, so I couldn't ask in person.
Let's see on the phone then.
No, it was a message. Specifically for me, it started with Instagram, and just putting a feeler out there, and then a few people. So it was kind of sort of a crowdfunding moment. But I knew there were a few people that watched regularly my stories and things that might engage, and then one particular individual that I knew I was just going to directly ask because they'd engaged with me before in a similar way. Yeah.
Let me rephrase it. When would it be better than to ask through email versus on the phone, which you presumably could have done?
I think that's up to you. If you are comfortable, that's like totally, like if you're an extroverted individual and you love a phone because that's easier for you to have a conversation and read the voice, go for it. That's totally fine. If you're at that level in that relationship with that person, I've definitely had people make asks of me over the phone, and I find those harder to decline because I'm caught off guard, so that's an advantage. It's an opportunity. Yeah, so I think it would depend on the relationship. I tend to have I prefer written communication until I'm really primed for that sort of thing, and I'm generally not. So, yeah.
I have an idea with this project. Would it have been also an idea to the printer to just work out something with the printer, or maybe you donate some art or just give the printer something directly?
So I worked with a gallery for a period of time, and actually with this exact printer that did the printing, they've done that to reduce printing costs. For the printer themselves, the company, the owner had to be interested in a piece of work specifically. There's more to it, but definitely being open to an exchange like that. Yeah, and I actually got the printing costs were covered by the museum itself, so they covered the print, and the individuals that contributed covered my time. Yeah. Okay. Questions? So that's a scaled model of an individual give ask. So this person already engaged with my practice, therefore there's someone or these people already engaged with my practice, therefore they're people I know are invested in what I'm doing. So if you're looking at opportunities, say you're trying to put together an event, or usually things like this, someone wants something out of it, right? So an event is a good way to do individual asks. I was talking to someone that needed like a taxidermy workshop done, and I was like, there's definitely spaces that you could ask to be a sponsor for specifically a taxidermy workshop, because it gets their name out there. It's kind of a niche thing, right? So if you're doing like poetry or performance, like there's probably spaces, depending on like the work that you are doing, that you might be able to ask to be like a sponsor for an event to help cover the costs. It's just about the why. Like I probably wouldn't engage with banks so much. Like we don't feel like we would have a lot of synergy, but other spaces I might. Does that make sense? Okay, so the overlapping principles, from my perspective, you need to be able to articulate the project or the idea pretty clearly. I love a bullet method to like write out my thoughts and kind of organize them, and like doing that for yourself is going to help you talk about it for other people. Crowdfunding, story arcs, you still have to spell it out for people, but individual giving, more of a framework and a why, I would say. It always will start with people you know, so the people that contributed, like some were good friends for me, and others were like loose acquaintances that were just able to and were interested in participating in some way, and amazing. And you must be very gracious, whether it's crowdfunding or individual giving. Be very thankful, because it's an honor to have someone contribute in that way to you, and so let them know. First, just out of like human decency, but also like that might help them want to do it again, maybe in the future. And then make it easy for them to pay. So I'm old fashioned, so I only have PayPal, which like someone told me is like old fashioned now, and I thought it was like cool because I had that. I still bring checks to dinners, like group dinners, because I don't do the other things. But making it easy for someone to give you money is going to make it easier for them to give you money. Like, yeah.
So, for example, to your point, in the email that you showed us, are you including a link to your payment options?
I kept it open at that point to see what they were gonna say, but yeah, then I did send a link.
Okay.
Yeah, after that, after the buy-in and the interest, yeah.
You didn't wanna seem presumptuous, that might, depends on what it's.
I wanted to have a conversation, yeah, I didn't want them to be like, oh, they're just sending copy pastes to everybody. It's like, truly, I wanna talk to you about this thing, yeah. Versus crowdfunding, it's like, yeah, here's the link, like that's fully that's the MO there.
Yeah.
Other questions? Okay. So we are at 6:55. I'm asking you the same question again. Of these few things, and knowing yourselves and what you do and your interpersonalness, which of these two is probably the best fit for your practice? We're gonna spend a little bit of time on our second worksheet for exercise 2, the better fit brainstorm. We're gonna spend 10 minutes, choose one, and then you're gonna frame out a project, hypothetical project. Could be a real thing you execute later and are fine, but why crowdfunding or why individual giving, and then what is the thing? And try to just spend some time framing it out. So we're gonna do 10 minutes for this, and so I will turn off my music at 6 after 7. So my questions, if you can't see them from the back, they're also basically on the sheet, but it's what is the project, what are you making, what are you doing, what platform might you use based on what we've talked about and what resonates. Are you using a platform at all? Is it just PayPal? Or is that one, whatever's cool? Who are you asking to contribute and why? This can be for individual gives or the start of your crowdfund. Why should they contribute? And then what's your timeline? Because that's important to all of this as well. Okay. Sharing is caring, am I right? Who wants to share with the room? Maybe a thought that you're having. Maybe we can help you workshop it for a minute. Anybody?
I have a little problem, just deciding if my model was crowdfunding or individual giving. It's hard for me to
Tell me
Yeah.
what you were thinking as the
be
project.
ambiguous about that. Well, I think that, essentially, I would like to use a sort of art gallery model to fund a space that my nonprofit needs, right? So, I was sort of hadn't really thought about those kind of sponsorship and membership platforms like Patreon. I had never really thought about using them sort of off-label for local reasons, where it really matters a great deal who it is a kind of crowdfunding and subscription model, but it matters a lot who the individuals are.
You probably need a plethora of people then, if it's gonna support the thing. I don't fully know
The
yeah.
overhead is like $500 a month, so
Oh,
it's
doable.
But you know what I mean? That's at the minimum, so it's not crazy, right? But just because you see how it's sort of in
Is it-
between, like a hybrid.
But crowdfunding always starts with the people that you know. So maybe you're building momentum via the importance of getting some people involved in the thing, but then you're talking to them about, do you think this is interesting for anybody else? Who might those people be? And it builds out. So I think, it's that in between of, the sort of individual level of more intimate conversations for a project, but then I think could shift into a crowdfunding model. And that's where the Patreon thing, I think, is interesting, because I think those are always gonna start at a more intimate level too, right? And then the idea is that it proliferates out.
I think in this case, it's almost goes from an individual level to a greater investment, almost, more of a sponsorship and membership.
Yeah.
Do you see why it's hybrid-y? Because it wouldn't necessarily be relevant. People should send money from everywhere, right? But it wouldn't necessarily be relevant beyond
this
local,
geographic scope, yep.
right?
Yeah.
So, you see what I mean? I want people to contend with it, but also put it on a schedule.
Yeah.
I don't,
Crowdfunding doesn't have to be beyond this geographic scope. For Luma, for instance, you guys, not very many of you knew about it, but some people do from further away, but a lot of the support is local, right? So crowdfunding can be local.
I heard about it on gallery night from the print shop, so
Oh,
they
cool.
made sure to boost you.
Oh, because I had a
Yeah.
piece there.
Yeah.
That's really nice. Does anyone have any thoughts around that?
Do you know about ZEFI? This is very specific to nonprofits, ZEFFY. They're a fundraising platform that doesn't take any fees if you're a 501c3.
Oh, beautiful.
So there's an issue, right, which is that the 501c3 that I'm attached to is really the safety net of the community problem solving. So this is also my way of having something that is so independent and entrepreneurial that I in no way cannibalize, you know what I mean? Its mission, I only am adding to it, you know what I mean? So it's complex, right? The idea is to bring community, basically offering the space to the community. So, you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
that, do you see, it's I have a.
It sounds like you're building out a larger question and web of things.
Yeah, I mean, I wonder about because the exercise starts with the distinction, you know what I mean? So I didn't want to fall off a cliff at the beginning of it, but like, it would work as a hybrid model, right?
And that's like long-term goal setting. Is there a way that you could use crowdfunding to kickstart the thing, like a Kickstarter, or just like startup funds, helping people get invested that way, right? To me, it's like there's a time sensitivity if it's a crowdfunding thing. You want to get something off the ground. To me, that's a good story and like something that people might want to be involved in. So we could break it down further than like the long-term, multi-year goal of like doing something that's long-term and sustainable. I think these are good for like a burst, right? And then how do you leverage that burst later on?
Yeah.
Becomes the question.
The launch.
The launch, yeah. What other projects did we start to shape? Yes.
Well, we're interested in installing a kiosk, like a video kiosk. They've taken all the phone booths from New York City and replaced them with these video kiosks.
Oh, cool.
Okay.
Do you know Matt White?
I'm sorry?
Do you know Matt White?
No.
Okay.
Does he work for Link NYC?
No.
That's who, well, okay, my son does, but, you know, and he monitors these things. So we want to install one at the farmer's market on the lakefront. We're sailors from Oakland, bi-coastal, you know, we have blue water sailboats here that need deep keels. So we want to have the inlet dredged so it can be like Paris and the Olympics, which will be presented on the kiosk. They have the content, like you watch the 4-hour opening ceremony, it's kind of matchless. You know, it's entertaining beyond, you know, how only the Olympics could do. And to create you know, an environment that has that you can actually take boats to. The inlets, it's just pathetic how, you know, they haven't dredged it. Lots of, you know.
So what is the project that you're?
Well, we want to install the kiosk with a lot of other people's work to display, to create a community
in that
like
space?
Paris. Ithaca maybe isn't that far away. It's just maybe we need to have some dredging done so we can get some boats with, you know, like I've brought some pictures from the Olympics. It's outstanding.
Which do you think is the better fit for this particular project?
Grants.
Grants. Okay, cool. We'll get into grants after we
Thank
take
you.
a quick break. Lovely. Anyone else want to share? Want to see if anyone? We have a choir. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. But I just wanted to share that I really your Kickstarter campaign.
Yeah.
I was very impressed by it because I was one of the donors.
Oh, were
to the
you?
campaign. Yes, I just walked in, like, it came up on my feed or something, and I saw it. And that's one of the reasons how I learned about Luma.
Oh,
And
nice.
and I applied to be a vendor there, and I brought my art there too.
Oh, amazing.
So that's really
Thank you for
good.
being there.
Last minute, they got me in there. I'm a perfumer.
Oh, Oh, cool. Amazing. Yeah, so Kickstarter can work really well as like a hybrid marketing campaign, right? Because like it helps people proliferate your idea further out than you, and you just gave a great example of someone who didn't know about it before who then contributed and fully engaged with it at a level that I couldn't have predicted in this room. Amazing, thank you. Yeah, Rebecca?
So, I'm gonna go at this for like an individual artist.
Yeah.
And this is what I went down the line with, and for like, correct me if I'm wrong. So I picked individual giving.
Okay.
And then what's the project? I have a new show that I thought about. And then, what platform? So for me, I was thinking email/letters.
Okay.
Because I am that introverted person. And calling is like terrible. And then who are you asking to contribute? I was thinking family and friends.
Beautiful.
And then I was also thinking maybe past supporters and collectors. And then why should they contribute? For the family friends, maybe because they want to be, like they're interested in seeing me succeed. And then also for the supporters and collectors, because they will have the opportunity for the first time, maybe?
Oh, nice. You give them a, ooh. Ooh.
Yeah, so I
Or
don't know.
VIP preview moment.
Yeah, and then what's your timeline? I was thinking like 6 months to a year. Like I don't know how that.
Do you know when your show's going to be?
No.
Okay. So maybe
I mean, yeah, I don't know where at the gallery yet, but yeah.
Okay. So maybe it's like when you know when you have that secured, it's like you work backwards from that. You give yourself 6 months. Cause I feel like oftentimes, right, like when there's a giving ask, the urgency is necessary. So if it's in a year from now, I have time to think and forget about it. But if it's like 6 months, 3 months away,
Okay.
that might be some urgency.
Yeah.
Yes. A project I'm working on bringing into the world, version 2, is the Survivor Affirmation Deck, which is a set of 40 rainbow affirmation cards for survivors of sexual violence. And I have Kickstarter set up and ready to go and launch when I'm ready. But I'm going to be asking my online community to contribute, and I'm also going to be reaching out to independent bookstores and gift shops, because I have a wholesale option where you can get 10 decks at a discount plus. And people should contribute because survivors deserve beauty and resources that aren't photocopied to death and that are created by other survivors and aren't like Pollyanna, toxic positivity bullshit, like things that like are uplifting and empowering and also real. And timeline, I'm not sure when I'm gonna launch it. I'm disabled and chronically ill, so I have to make sure my body, mind is up for a launch and going. But it's ready to go when I am.
Beautiful. Great. Thank you for sharing. I look forward to seeing it too.
Thank you.
Brian, you had your hand up. Do you wanna? Okay.
I
Thank
just
you.
wanted to ask, do people use Instagram gifts for stuff like that, or is it just all small change?
Does anybody use Instagram GIFs? I have not used it.
I've never used it.
I've never been able to connect to it.
Well, yeah, I've tried, but I
So-
think you had to put your social security number in, and I don't wanna do that.
Yeah, I haven't personally used it. I
That's my
do,
vote.
I think, right? So I feel like it's an option if you can figure your way through it. Has anyone given to Instagram gifts? Right, so
Yeah.
that's a sampling.
Yeah. It's a mystery thing.
Okay, any questions on this 2/3, 3/3, 3/4 of what we've done? Okay, we're gonna keep moving so that I can keep you on time. Any guesses as to what this means? Dude, who is it?
What's his name?
Who is it?
Well, he was in trouble.
What's he
years ago.
doing? It's you, grant writing.
Oh,
We're grant writing. Are you disgusted by it? Yeah, okay. Yeah. Yeah. I put these original slides together pretty late at night, and this is the tail
That's a
end.
wine.
I was giggling. I'm glad you all giggled too.
pencil.
So, and it's really hard to find images of him writing, by the way. I went down a wormhole with that one. So, grant writing, I'd say the sort of maybe character traits or attributes that I would attribute to it, going back to our SWOT, would be if you like to do a deep dive, if you like to do some research, if you find that enjoyable, grant writing is probably for you. If you bask in written communication, grant writing is probably for you. Yes, those are kind of my ties. If you like instructions and some structure to your life, grant writing is probably for you. Okay, so as promised, Robin will cover very in-depth elements of grant writing for you in a few weeks. So I'm not gonna overlap what she does. I'm gonna give you baseline verbiage around grant writing. For some of you, this will be redundant. For others, it's a good starting point. So bear with me. So for grant writing, 99% of the time, you're gonna need to work with a nonprofit, a 501c3. Those mean the same things. It is a tax exempt code or a code with the IRS. And typically, either as an entity, you can apply for a grant, or as an individual, you can apply for a grant through an entity or in partnership with an entity that is a 501c3. There are grants that you can apply to as an individual and directly get money from. What Robin offers is one specific category of that, or a few specific categories of that you as an individual can apply to. Robin is your 501c3 in this case. Make sense? When a fiscal sponsor, does anyone without reading it know what that is? Okay, so fiscal sponsorship is when a 501c3 doesn't want the burden, basically, of figuring out the logistics of the project itself, but you've presented them, potentially, with a really well fleshed out project that they're confident that you can handle on your own, but the 501c3 is still needed, so they might agree to be a fiscal sponsor, where they accept the funds and hand them over to you. Basically, they take the paperwork burden, the financial burden off of your plate, the financial burden being reporting back to the granting entity, and then you execute the thing. You still owe them information so that they can fill out forms and whatnot, but you're operating pretty solo. There's a project that I'm working on that I mentioned in Broome and Tioga counties called Artist Grant Navigator. Rebecca's engaging with me on that. It is fiscally sponsored by an arts council. They didn't want the burden of taking on my timesheets or managing my time. They have too much on their plate. They didn't have the capacity. So I do it myself, and they believe in the project and are allowing it to happen. Typically, a fiscal sponsor will take a percentage of whatever grant you are writing. That's 100% common and totally valid because they are putting themselves in a position on your behalf, so taking a percentage is normal. They might not, which is nice too, but most of the time they will. They can vary between, like I said, 0% and up to 10% of a grant, and somewhere in there is very common. A fiscal sponsorship option is NIFA. You can apply if you have a project in mind. But it needs to be they have stipulations about it. So
NIFA, what?
New York Foundation for the Arts, NIFA, yep. You can apply to them for fiscal sponsorship. There's also fiscal sponsorship often offered through arts councils throughout upstate New York in general. The Arts Council of the Southern Finger Lakes has done it before as well. But fiscal sponsorship is a thing. Yeah, just verbiage mostly. Grant terms. So 4-year or FY, say 2025. It tells you the duration that the grant or the project is supposed to happen within. So for instance, this year in July, I might have written a grant for year 2025, but I wrote it in 2024. It's important to know when the time clock starts for that grant, so January 2025, and when it ends, December 2025, because my project has to take place in that window. Those brackets can shift. Maybe it starts in 2024 and it ends in 2025, so paying attention to what that means. Why is it important? We'll get into why it's important later. It's important to know just in general because certain grants you can't apply to in the same year. For instance, for the same year, there's something we'll talk about later that relates to that as well. So restricted funds is also a term that comes up. It's money that is awarded through the grant that has a specific purpose, right? So maybe it's funds for a project or for marketing, or if we get materials, the categories of things. Certain categories might not be allowed, therefore it is restricted to something. Artist fee, things like that. It's limited in what it can be used for. Unrestricted we love. It's any legal purpose it can be used for. And it allows greater flexibility. So if you're with a nonprofit, we love operational or unrestricted funds. As an artist, it can be a little bit limiting. Sometimes funds are geared towards material costs and maybe don't actually want to do things like artist fees, which is a little annoying, or want to keep out receptions and they want it to be about programs. Those are restrictions on what the funds can be used for. Grant writing language. So an artist statement, there's differences between an artist statement, an artist bio, and a project statement. An artist statement is a brief sort of summary of your overarching ideas in your practice. And that can apply to your literary ideas, can apply to your music-based ideas and the founding principles, but it's about your practice. You leave your bio out of it, so it's not about what you are doing per se as a resume, it's about the themes, the ideas, the concepts. So for example, Tammy Smith uses oil paints to create visual narratives that use water to reference the climate crisis. It's a little bit rambly, but she's an oil painter, it's what she does, and she's engaged in the climate crisis as a theme. Artist bio. It's a synopsis of your resume, and these are just elements that might be asked for in a grant. They're not always there. These are just distinctions. So a narrative version of your resume, if you list out all the shows you've had, all the speaking engagements you've had, the publications, that's your resume. But then putting it into an annoying paragraph format, that's your artist bio. So Tammy Smith, so annoying. Tammy Smith, born 1970, you don't always have to put like place of birth or date of birth, it's just an example. Lives and works from her upstate New York studio, an active member of the arts community for over a decade. Smith is a recipient of a 2023 NIFA fellowship, etc. And then you might list the things that you've gone and done. That's a bio. Project statement, you're getting more specific. It's similar to your artist statement, but it's a more lensed, focused in rung of that. So for Tammy, going back to lovely Tammy, through ecological change, this might be the project in particular, Tammy Smith will create a series of 3 24 by 24 oil paintings from visual references she's accumulated over the last 2 decades living in upstate New York. So it gives a sense of what this specific project is going to be doing and what that thing will be. A project budget. A project budget tells the same story as the project narrative, but it tells it with money. Tells it with numbers. So it's the story of income, not your personal income and personal finances, but income for the project itself. So I think I have an example on the next slide here. No, I don't. It's income for the project itself. So if you're fundraising, take my example for instance, for the hours and the time to create the catalog and the printing costs, that is the project, that is the budget. I need $900. And those become expenses, the line items, the things that I then pay myself for my time. I then pay the printer for the printing costs. And I'm only including things in the budget that are addressed in the narrative. So if I'm not talking about, I don't know, the distribution of these catalogs, then there shouldn't be a line for distribution of catalogs in the expenses. Budget and project statement address the same things in different ways. And a good budget is a balanced budget for grant writing in particular. What is a balanced budget? It means your income, the money into the project, equals the money out. Money in, money out. Always include an artist fee. Because everyone, I think at one point, this is like my own hiccup and I'm getting recorded saying this right now. I was like, how do I make money off this? Like, where's me? And I thought that you had to like pad the marketing budget and that's what you could keep. No, you just pay yourself. So always include an artist fee. And again, this is going to be niche depending on the grant type. So if they restrict and you can't have an artist fee, that's not very common, then you wouldn't be able to, and that would dictate what can go into it. But generally speaking, this is a hypothetical. SCR is the grant type that you can apply to through Robin here at CAP. So say you applied to CAP and you got $2,000 towards your project. You maybe did a little crowdfunding and you expect t-shirt sales. I don't know. That's your total income, and this is how you might break it out. Artist fees, you're paying 5 artists for a performance. You're renting a venue. Maybe this becomes an X out because they're offering it to you for free. Like maybe it's not relevant, but maybe it is relevant. It's things to consider. Marketing, print, digital. Do you need to get hardware? Are you doing paint? I made things up, but it's the details. Should have made it for Tammy. Do you know what double dipping is? Anyone want to guess based on?
More than one grant at a time?
True.
For the same thing?
Somewhat, yeah. We're almost there. So it's, you got your hummus, and you're dipping your pita bread in twice, so you can't dip twice into the pita, or your pita twice into the hummus because not cool. ew, cooties. But same principle for pots of money. You don't dip twice, typically. There's different rules, but generally speaking, the grants that you and I would be going for are going to be coming somehow from New York State and coming to us in various ways. So 2 or more projects from a grant or from a grantee, which would possibly be you, you cannot apply. You cannot apply twice.
For the same project or?
2 or more projects and grant applications that would benefit the same artist. Right, so you can't, so this is bad wording, I'm terribly sorry. So as an artist, my example is this. New York State gives out money that we can access. I cannot apply to New York State for money for me twice in a year. For year 2025, I can only apply to New York State once for money. Okay, so NYSCA, the New York State Council on the Arts, offers us money as individual artists. They also offer us, as counties, as conglomerate counties, re-granting funds. It's still New York State money. I, as Anna, cannot both apply to NYSCA and to CAP in the same granting year. It's the same pocket of funds. I'm not allowed to double dip.
Even if it's 2 different projects.
Correct.
Thank you.
For this particular grant type, yep.
From the state?
From New York.
Both from the state.
Right, because these are both New York State.
Yeah.
And
Is
they,
that just specific to New York State, or do most states have it?
I only know a lot about New York State.
Yeah.
And so my next point, I'm gonna skip these. Do not panic, because again, there's a lot of information and it's actually things that our friend Robin will be covering. Don't worry. Okay. Grant guidelines are your best friend. You have to, if you are going to be engaging in grants, you have to read the guidelines. And that will tell you about double dipping scenarios and why they are permissible or are not permissible. Yeah. So assessing if any grant is a good fit, read the guidelines. It becomes your like morning coffee best friend when you're running a grant. Like that's the level you should be at. It's no longer the newspaper, it's the grant guidelines. Attend the info session. What's wild about a grant info session is the people that wrote the guidelines are saying the things that they couldn't fit into the words on the page, that you know that they're probably gonna tell the panel as well. So they might say things that like really underscores community is a huge component of our wanting to give funds, or artist fees are our priority. So when you go to write your grant, you wanna make sure that you're also underscoring that. Even if it was already a part of your project, like underline, bold, italicize, whatever you gotta do to make it more robust. But it tells you a lot more than just the grant guidelines in PDF format. Ask yourself what the grant is for. So if it's for community engagement and that's not core to your practice, it's not a good fit for you. If it's about commissioning new work and you're not necessarily using the grant to make new work for yourself, or you weren't thinking of that for this project, but you were trying to do something that is community involved, like an outdoor public art installation that is collaborative, that might not be the category for you, but the other one might be. If you are, say, teaching, there's grants for that, like teaching artist grant is a thing. Anyone get any of the SCR grants before? What category did you get?
I've gotten a few for the teaching artist ones.
Okay.
Different, a wide variety of them.
Yeah, so there's different grants for different things. It's about which is a good marriage for your practice. Also ask yourself who's the intended recipient base. Like statistically speaking, I like to talk about NYSCA grants and SCR grants because NYSCA is for anyone in New York State, but there's a barrier to entry because you need fiscal sponsorship to get to it, which limits the pool that can access it, which means it's actually probably, cost-benefit analysis-wise, a good idea for us to apply to it if we can. SCR is geographically based. So it's not all of New York State. In your case, do you know the breakup for Tompkins, the SCR grants? For me, I know Broome, Otsego, and Shenango County are lumped together for our version of SCR. Potsdam has like 3. What are the grant counties for you for SCR?
Tompkins.
Just Tompkins?
Yes, and it used to be that every county in the state
had the New York State Council on the Arts money,
Yeah,
and it's not true anymore.
I know, Broome is out of it.
Broome is out of it, and I don't know if anyone is administering grants in Broome or Seneca County or Tioga County.
So we have a.
Email me and I could look it up.
So did you used to have like a larger conglomerate, or were you always just Tompkins?
No, I was always just Tompkins, because we're the Tompkins County Arts Council, and that was our,
Yeah,
I mean, I think New York State Council on the Arts would like it if we took on other counties,
yeah.
but there's only 2 of us, and,
Ours got lumped into 3 other counties.
yeah. What is STR again?
SCR, Statewide Community Re-Grant.
Oh, okay. Those are the grants that we administer that used to be called decentralization grants for many years.
So that's, Robin will talk about those really in depth. Those are coming up. That's why I'm not gonna go into it.
Yeah.
She'll cover.
I'm actually going to post the grant stuff on our website and send it all out via e-blast, probably by next Wednesday. There'll be workshops, there'll be Zoom workshops, there'll be workshops in Dryden and GIAC and Southside and here and Trumansburg and taped, and then the grants will be due in January.
Beautiful. My last couple slides, I promise, will kind of be on time. Again, read the guidelines. Bullet points are your friend. If you need help framing ideas that are later going to be written out, bullets are your friend. Don't overpromise in your grant. That's a trap that I fell into myself when grant writing. Just be honest about the scope of the project, both for yourself, because you don't want to get locked in and approved for something that you can't actually execute, but then also for them, because you don't want to overpromise and not be able to execute it. Always add an artist fee and like prepare now. Start like working out the ideas before it becomes time, because I think I personally at least, I tend to leave things for the last minute if I'm not planning for it, and it makes it a miserable experience that I never want to do again. But if I like actually give myself like a jog time versus a sprint, like I might actually want to do it again. This is who you're writing for. Again, Robin will cover this. They read a lot. So your job as a writer, a grant writer, bless you, is to make it clear for them, make it easy for them, make their life so much easier, and like they'll be so happy. And then if you take anything away from today, it's that you have options, right? We've talked about crowdfunding, we've talked about individual giving, and we did a little sampler, a little starter point for the grant writing. Just try something, right? And then go from there. It's all about learning. Where to find me? I'm Anna Warfield, or Artist Grant Navigator. Artist Grant Navigator is a project geared towards Broome and Tioga, but I put out resources that I don't care who reads them, it's fine. And then I'll be back on November 21st. And if you have questions, your hand is raised.
Oh, I wanted to share something that, relative to the last thing. What I did, and I got a grant, so small, but look at the winner. Oh, the folks who won, look at their thing.
Yeah.
Like I got someone who wrote something very simple, and I was like, okay. And somebody who wrote something very complex. I was like, oh my word. So I just was like, I'm in the middle.
Yeah.
So yeah, good. So you can see what.
Do you hear that? Research. That's research.
Yeah.
That's what's important for the grants.
How do you keep this information organized as you're applying for multiple, I'm assuming you apply for multiple grants a year?
I like Google Drive.
Yeah.
I love it.
Is it just spreadsheets that you're building out as you go?
I'm a little obsessive with the admin side at this point. So I have like overall spreadsheets that I'm tracking and following, and then I always make a folder and a document around a specific opportunity. Sometimes it's a grant, sometimes it's a show pitch, sometimes it's there's a bunch of different things.
Thank you.
And I always keep my grant writing narrative stuff in its own document so that I can reference back. Even if I never reference back, I still can.
So you just gave that's a whole other workshop that you just said.
Oh, I
sounded the organization of
arts admin, yeah.
Yeah.
Artist admin, yeah.
Right over my head.
Any other questions? I know that we're all done hearing me spiel, but alas, here I am.
I have 3 grant writing points. Read the guidelines. Do not fill out the application without reading the guidelines. Everyone does it. It's stupid. Stop taping. Don't bullshit.
Don't overpromise.
Don't make stuff up, and understand that it's a competition. And that's the short version.
Can I do a shout out about you?
All right.
100% of the time, Robin will give you feedback if you get your grant in early.
Yeah.
Like, if the deadline is
I'll even do it the day
10th.
before.
Yeah, not the day